Are we live? Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. Welcome to Cake, guys. As usual, today we're going to be talking about some down and dirty, practical ways to improve your business. And as usual, we're totally donation-based. And we've been meeting since the first Wednesday of this year, which is, I don't know, like 500 weeks ago or something now. Today we're actually going to be revisiting the very first cake that we did, which should be pretty fun. We didn't have anything for that actually recorded. So we'll get a little video of that for the archives, and then also hopefully toss out some new ideas and things that we didn't talk about as much then. And we also have a totally fresh worksheet that hopefully covers some new material as well. Today's topic is going to be tearing apart an idea, or stretching an idea is what I called it for this worksheet. And basically, it's just taking something, you know, like so you have an idea for a business. Even if you know what you're doing, I guess, which is not a given. A lot of people just have an idea and are completely overwhelmed by the idea of starting something up, or of the hurdles that need to actually go into legal formation and things like that. But even assuming you know what you're doing, there's so many different ways that you can go about doing it, and so many different styles of business, and so many different decisions. Even if you decide that you're going to make, some kind of metallic, like kettlebell necklace that people can play as a musical instrument or something like that. You know, it's like the style of metal you use, where you get it, like who you're marketing to, where you decide to sell. Like everything is totally variable as well, even when you have the specifics hammered down. So just kind of in light of that, figuring out what you can do early on, even in the formation process, especially like what I find is that once I've come up with an idea for something and start kind of like fleshing it out and being like, oh, I could do this, I start getting like so attached to my vision of things that it's really hard to like squash that early on and go back to like the initial drawing board and really figure out what the maybe more sane decisions are. So this is kind of that, like getting in there and figuring out what will make your life easier and more sane as the business develops, as opposed to more difficult, even if it's a really cool idea, and kind of figuring out what directions you can take that. So the first things I want to go over are actually things, starting I guess back at the beginning, back when you have this idea. We're going to talk a little bit about, to give you an outline, about what it means to start a business and what the minimum things that go into that are. We're also just going to talk about the idea in general, and like how to do good brainstorming, and how to kind of like get as many ideas on the table as you can to choose from. That, by the way, just is the best tactic that I've found to that fixation that I have on any idea that I get going, is just to like brainstorm the hell out of it so that I get all of the ideas out there, and then you can kind of like pick and choose and put them together at your leisure. And then we're also going to be talking about taking those ideas, and how you pick and choose them, and which ones you end up pulling down and putting into your final formation. And then just a few little tidbits at the end as well of things, now especially having run this brick and mortar business for a couple years, which is a lot different than just the service-based business or anything I've done in the past, about things that really will hopefully make your life a little easier as they go along, and things that you can do early on to avoid some of the pitfalls we've fallen into at points. So first, just kind of like fleshing out that list and getting all of your ideas out there. So let's say you're starting with something like kettlebell necklaces that you can play as musical instruments, and then you're like, okay, well great, we got kettlebell, like maybe I should make little like xylophone necklaces too, you know? And then we can play them, like pretty soon you have this like whole line of musical instruments that you can like put on your neck, and then you're like, well, bracelets would be cool too, right? And you can like play the kettlebell with the bracelets, like little metallic beads on them, you know? So I would say like great, like, and rather than just coming up with like all the ideas you can, which is a really intimidating question to put in front of yourself, I find a really useful one is figuring out like the most epic version of whatever it is that you're thinking about doing, like kettlebell orchestra style necklace. And just come up with like, if you had just like $10 million and you did not expect any returns on this, and you just wanted to create the most like grandiose version of whatever it is you're doing, and like write that down, because chances are that will just kind of include everything else, and probably like the cooler versions of whatever it is you were brainstorming anyway. And then the inverse of that is also a really good exercise, which is to list the most like minimal version of something you can imagine doing, like taking like used bean can from your cupboard and like turning it upside down and like running some twine through it, and like great, you got your like first kettlebell prototype for the necklace. And like the two of those combined, I find, are just a really useful starting exercise for getting out there. And then for the simplest version, a good way to like slowly build that up. So sometimes it's easier to build up from the simpler version rather than build down from the like really grandiose version. You know, it's like, I don't know, do you take like the GPS tracking out of the kettlebell necklaces, or do you take out the like crazy laser lights that shine on the ceiling? Like, it's a tough decision sometimes. But building up from the lower one is actually easier if you have this grand vision in mind. So like you start with like the tin can, and you're like, okay, well let's say that I had like 40 hours to spend on this rather than like 10 minutes it took to make this tin can one. Like, how close could I get to this grand vision in that 40 hours, like just in a work week or something like that? And kind of going up from there, and you're like, well, these ones I definitely cannot add in. Like, these ones maybe I could. And that's a really easy way to find the scalability of awesomeness, I guess is a good way of putting it. Like, the easiest steps to get towards a really cool vision. Because some things that you're like, that would be awesome, take like designated programmers and like 6 months of time, paying them on salary. And some things are like, oh, I guess I could just order that from like, you know, Norway and have it shipped to me within a few days and it'll be here. Great. Like, perfect. So that's a really good one. The best advice I have in general for like making your giant list of things and your grand vision for brainstorming really is just like go really fast. If you can have like someone dictate for you, or like someone up at like the equivalent of someone writing it out at a whiteboard or something. Even like you know, cell phones nowadays, like carrying around a voice recorder is kind of ridiculous, although we do it for cake. But like cell phones have just like little voice recorder apps on them all the time now. Like sometimes just like shouting into that and like as fast as you can with ideas is really good. But basically you need a way to like make it past the pre-filter. Like as soon as you start thinking like, oh well that one's not good enough, then like anyone could become not good enough. So like you have to find a way to just like get your mouth going faster than your brain almost. Like toss out really stupid ideas. You're like, and raccoons are like dancing on, and you're like, that doesn't make any sense, but I don't care. Like going on, like okay. Yeah, if you can find any way to not censor yourself, that's the best. Like, yeah, I expect to just cut out like a lot of bad things from it. And then, so once you have that, I mean, that's a really fun part, and it's a fun exercise. And I totally actually suggest, even though it's like kind of like those getting to meet like icebreaker exercises, like even though they sound really lame, like I really suggest you try doing it. Sometime, like even if you're just like falling asleep at night and like you're just like, okay, voice recorder, here we go, like drifting off to sleep recordings. The next thing too that I'll toss your way to think about as far as ways to expand that list and directions to go in for grandiose visions. Think about automation and about your own replacement is a really good direction to go from the very beginning. And that's something that people get stuck in a lot, like thinking of visions of just where their business is or what their business could be providing, rather than where they are in the business and what function they're going to serve down the road. And even from the beginning, I suggest as much as possible funnel early money into things that will save you sanity rather than things that will boost your savings account. Like if you can hire on a bookkeeper / an accountant early on, rather than like trying to do those yourselves to save a few extra dollars or be able to like go to, like I'd say cut going to the movies and like the latte and get a bookkeeper, because you will just be so much happier. And the same goes with a lot of different things. Like, and some people love bookkeeping. Like some people were just born to crunch numbers. So like if that's your thing, then like just like do it. Yeah, absolutely. And like farm out the talking to clients side of things. But whatever is going to keep you sane, and like start thinking about that direction when you're doing big brainstorming too, not just like, okay, and the kettlebell necklaces have all these things, being like, and I just have an army of salespeople who are selling these kettlebell necklaces, and I get to sit on top of a big throne made of diamonds and like just dictate down with the scepter. And it's like, well, I mean, you know, there are crazy business people out there. Like, you can actually set that up. Like, you could be dictating down to an army of salespeople with the scepter if that's like your grand vision in life. And like, you should probably think early on about trying to get there. So where does this leave us as far as getting down to like a minimum product or minimum things that you can reduce down to increase your sanity? Figuring out things, so there's a few different ones, and I'll just kind of go over them, and then we'll revisit these a little bit. I was just trying to figure out the like clearest way to convey all of this information at once, and I'm like, oh, in pieces probably is the best way to do that. So one thing is marketing. Figuring out how you can tie marketing just into everything you do. So for example, like if you have internal reports, or if you have something where it's just like you're going to have to write a description of what's going on in your company anyway, like make those external facing blog posts. If you're doing just like setting up different things in your shop, if you have a physical shop, or even like if you're researching different online merchants for what you're going to sell things through, like turn that into a blog post and post that online. Say like, hey, we're searching for these online merchants, and here's why we decided to go with these ones. Give people some kind of like personal in to your story. And the more you can make it personal, and the more you can turn whatever it is you're doing anyway into an outward-facing, public-facing thing, the more you'll be on people's minds, and the more you're just out there. And that's free marketing. So from the very beginning, the more you can just tie that marketing into whatever, like even your planning process, the better. And so from that giant list of really grandiose things, start like pulling down all of the things that will immediately market it further. So a good example of this is like how this might apply to actually planning a business, or what kind of business you're doing like with your idea. Is I remember like on a night walk with one of my friends, I was thinking about how cool it would be to have a really awesome slow motion camera, and all the neat things you could do with that. And so we started thinking of different kind of like slow motion ideas that we had. You know, you could just like film people doing like really dramatic things in slow motion, like jumping into a pool, or just like have like, you're like, yeah, I'll come to your event, and just like film things in dramatic slow motion, put it to classical music or whatever it is. And then the best idea we came up with, which ties into the marketing tied in like from the start idea, is was blowing things up in slow motion. So like people send you like things that they hate, like their cell phone, that they like that like died on them like a million times and dropped all of these calls, and like you will just like destroy it and film it in slow motion for them, like, and then they get to choose the mechanism of destruction, like axe swing, like doused in gasoline and lit on fire, like firecracker tied to it, and then you just like film it and send it back to them, and they have the product. But the reason we really like that for like a just random small business idea was because like immediately the first thing that someone's going to do with a slow motion video of whatever it is that they hate being destroyed is like go share it on Facebook, or like go share it whatever. Like video content that's just like emailed over is so easy to share, and just a little like tag in the bottom immediately makes like, oh, I wish I could have like one of my belongings destroyed in slow motion. It's just like such a shareable thing. So thinking about that as opposed to like going and filming like wedding shots in slow motion or something like that, which can be shared around but doesn't have that immediate, like, not everyone's having a wedding at any given point, but I think almost everyone has something that they'd like just love to see completely ruined. So that's why that, like, so yeah, of that like huge list, I'd probably like discard wedding and pull down like slow motion destroy objects, and hopefully there'd be like a lot of other ideas I'd pull down from that as well, but that's kind of like a limiting factor that narrows it down a little bit. Figuring out, just like, so I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but what you love, like what you love doing, and what you really don't. And there's a lot of things that go along with starting up a business that a lot of people just don't like doing. And you hear that a lot from business owners, like, oh, I was really into sewing or making my own clothes, and I got into business, and suddenly I had to be like marketing and finding customers and handling accounts and taking payments and like handling complaints and all of these things that like doesn't go along with sewing exactly. And I would say, like, definitely plan for that. There's no reason that you have to be doing the thing that you don't like doing. Like, if what you want to do is that labor of sewing, like, you can hire someone to be your boss. Like, that is fine. And you'll just get, you still own the company and do whatever you want, but you can hire someone to just manage it and handle all of that. Not initially, because you probably don't have the money, like, if you're just starting up and trying to bootstrap the entire thing to do it initially. But you can get there a lot faster than people think, especially if you're willing to just, like, pay yourself like an employee. And if your goal isn't to make a ton of money and act like a business owner from the beginning, you pay someone a higher salary than you pay yourself and take the stress off, and then like you hire someone else who's doing the same job you are and pay them what you're getting, only then you get a cut of that too, and you can kind of build up from there. And I see that a lot. Like a lot of people feel like once they get into business, they almost like have to be business people. That's really not the case. I think you can automate towards the things that you really actually like care about doing and love doing a lot faster than you'd think you're able to. Also, a great way to get a free education on things is to hire people to do whatever it is. Like we've been doing this with contracting, with all of the build out that we've been doing with expansion and with like building walls and stuff like that. When we changed out the floors in our float tank rooms to like we did pebble tile with epoxy grout, which is apparently the most insane kind of tiling that you can do, according to contractors. We just like helped them. We got like a really good deal. We got like a really good pebble tiler out. We traded him some floats as well. But then we offered to be his assistants, essentially. And we were like, instead of you bringing in one assistant, what if we, like, two of the owners, just, like, help you out through this entire process? And we'll, like, that way you won't have to pay someone, and, like, we'll be there, you'll have two extra hands. It should make up for us not knowing what we're doing. And he was totally down, and, like, as a result now, I just know how to lay, like, a perfect pebble tile epoxied floor, which is awesome. Which can, like, in my line of work, is actually useful too. And like, it was really fun to actually do some physical labor and learn in the process. But same thing, like if you want to do like find out accounting or how to do it, I don't suggest reading through a giant book on QuickBooks or like a college textbook on accounting and like accrual versus cash-based and stuff like that. I suggest like hiring a bookkeeper and just like asking to like sit in when they're doing your bookkeeping and find out what they're doing and what's going on with that, because there's a ton of stuff you also just won't have to know. Like accounting books are trying to cover everything that you have to learn for any type of business that you'll be doing accounting for. And sitting next to someone and just like learning what they're doing for your business specifically, you'll learn that like 5% that actually applies to you and is meaningful. And then you'll just know how to do it. So that's like the opposite route. Like instead of if you do want to bring people on but eventually replace them, or maybe you are interested in learning something but you don't have the skills now, still just hiring someone on who knows how to do it is a great way to get those skills as well. Finances, hire a bookkeeper. I just like, you should seriously just hire a bookkeeper. Here's a markup from that list of like grand ideas and things that are coming down, even for options in your product. Choosing things that have 4 to 10 times markup over what you have to pay for them, whether it's a product or a service, is really what you should be considering, or considering how you're going to market your own whatever it is you're selling, little widgets. For a higher price, if you can add some kind of brand or something to them, like even if it's a commodity, you can then price it up to the 4 to 10 times. Because on margins slimmer than that, you're talking about wanting to appeal to like national chains and have like selling so many units of whatever it is that you're doing, that from a small business perspective, like the growth is going to be so small and so frustrating, and you're not going to be able to give discounts to other distributors in the way that they'd want. Like until you're carried by Walmart, getting like just a really small, like a 2 times multiplier is going to be really hard to expand out from there. And so many other costs come into it. Like once you want to remove yourself from the equation, even if you're doing, especially if you're doing product-based things, you're going to have to pay someone to take your place. So figure that into the cost as well. Like how much is it going to take someone to prepare whatever it is that you're doing, because you're not going to be there eventually, and it should still be making a profit even down the entire pipeline through distributors and through the outletters and stuff. So 4 to 10 times is really good. More towards 10 times is like even better, and it just means you can give discounts, you can like get as many people to sign up, you can, it makes for a much more sane lifestyle. Vitamins are the typical example of this, and supplements, or CDs also are 2 really common ones. Software design, software as a service is turning into like the more modern one for the software side of things. As well, really like any software, just because the time that goes into it is the limiting factor most of the time, not the distribution, especially now, not the bandwidth or the storage as much as it used to be as well. And then the next one, the last thing that I wanted to kind of toss in there for that pulling down and reduction is reduction and combination itself. Which is a good, so like the example of turning your inward-facing reports into outward-facing blog posts and kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone is awesome, because you just made one less thing that you have to do. So from your giant list, if you see things that fit together, like once you're adding, actual processor unit into your kettlebell necklace to control the lights that are shining off of it, well, adding on a little like recorder system that's going to record all of your mad beats and like email them out to you afterwards is not the hardest thing in the world. But adding on that like email unit without having the lights on there to begin with is like preposterous. So figuring the ones that actually group together and go together, and you're like, oh, well, once I'm adding this on, I might as well do all of these other things too, is also a good way to think about it. That way you're not just going by, like I find, and this is like hopefully a human trait and not just a personal fault, but I find when I'm going through things that I really, I have this urge to just go with whatever seems cool to me at the time, or wherever my greatest need is, which is not the sanest as far as things you have on you for production or for release. So, for example, like I might go like, oh, I want laser lights on my kettlebell necklace, and then I might be like, yeah, and I want like crazy Egyptian twine that's like 10,000 years old to be like what we use for this thing. And like the costs and resources that go into gathering both of those and combining them are like preposterous. So yeah, bulking things can kind of lead you on your actual logical paths towards steps rather than completely insane ones. And then reduction in general, and I can't emphasize this one enough, but basically getting as simple as you can with the thing. Even if you're adding in complexity, it's in something that has to already exist. like if you have to make a mold for the kettlebell necklace already, you might as well like research the exact acoustical resonance that is like really familiar and like makes people happy. Or maybe like if you're going to be etching your name into it anyway, you figure out like some kind of insignia you can etch on there that like clicks with the kind of audience that you're going to be reaching, like some sacred geometry or something like that, right? Things that have to exist, you have to use some kind of twine around it, so you might as well like spend some time making an intelligent decision about what type of twine that you're going to use. But at the basic core, all you have is this kettlebell necklace. And I would say like avoid going for the xylophone necklace, like avoid going for the giant like like the gong necklace as well, like all of these other additions, because that's more things that you have to price, it's more things that you have to write copy for advertising, it's more things that you have to keep in stock, more options that you have to sort through when you're shipping them out. Like if all you do is one thing and do it really well, your life will be so much easier. As much as possible, just reduce down to like a single service or a single product that you offer. And like the instinct across the board, I think, is to do the exact opposite. But yeah, choose the things, like choose to add complication to the things that are already there by necessity, and take away everything else would be the best way that I know how to phrase that one. And I said that was the last one, but that's not true. There's one more. So this is the last one, which is growth. And this ties less into this overall idea of brainstorming and reducing that down and actually taking what you want out of this vast network of ideas you came up with, and more for making sure that you more for the pathway between those ideas and understanding how it's going to like grow and fit together. And a book that I was reading recently made me think about this one, and it was talking about a restaurant that's set up in New York that was, I think it's like I can't remember the name of it now. It's like the most popular on Zagat's list for a really long time, until another restaurant that the guy set up displaced it, and they just pretty much switched back and forth between first and second. And the guy said the only reason he opened up the second restaurant to begin with was because, well, not the only reason, but a large portion of the reason was because he had a lot of people in middle management positions there who had nowhere to grow. Like he was just like, no, I'm only going to open this one restaurant. That's all I'm ever going to do. And then you end up with a really talented team of people who have already filled the upper like tiers of positions. And you end up with a really talented team of people who are right below them, and who are right below them. And eventually the like people on the lower tiers are like, well, am I just going to stay here forever? Like, what's going on? Like, there's nowhere to go from here. And so he was like risking losing a large portion of his team, and he's like, oh, like I guess I should probably set up more opportunities for them. So making sure that in this whole thing too, even though it's just you going into the business, if it goes to a certain point, like you are going to have a team of people. And I think that's also not immediately obvious from the beginning. And making sure that you have a way for that team of people to really grow with the business and get involved, and that you have next steps for them to take, and a way for it to take input and have the thing grow. Like if all you're trying to do is set something in stone and hire placeholders, that's fine too. And like a lot of businesses run like that. But if you're trying to create an organization that will eventually have employees or that you want to grow, I'd say like start to think about how you're going to automate growth and automate insight and automate things that are going to make it progress into the future as well, and make sure that you're taking everyone along for the ride and not just yourself, because that's like a weird problem that can come up that is not immediately obvious. And that's pretty much it. That's all I have for today on that tearing apart an idea. So we're going to take a small little break. I'll answer a couple questions if anyone had any on that, and then we'll come back and do a little workshopping on people's actual ideas. Did anyone have any questions or anything that was unclear they were just curious about from that? Audience? Anything from the
My main questions about collaborations with people, or whether how much to keep in your own zone and how many things to I just how to begin the subject of once your game gets involved with someone else. And so that's kind of a thing of like trying to figure out like how much to completely keep in my own domain, of like to keep my name on as many parts of the process of, let's say, getting into clothing. How much of the clothing, or whether it's actually just like, well, the design and the printing of the images, or even just the design of the images is what I want to be a part of, and then maybe the design of the clothing and the making of the clothing can be someone else. Do you have any advice on that? Because that's been kind of a stopping point for me, is just trying to understand what that looks like and not knowing. A little hesitancy about using control through collaboration.
Totally. I mean, I think setting things up really clearly from the beginning is an important factor. And a lot of that is... What was that? Oh, sure. So the question was just how to approach collaboration, and especially like how to kind of set things up to make sure that you're retaining control of what you want, and to make sure that things are kind of going according to your vision, what to just sort of let go of. Is that more or less accurate? Okay, good. Put me on the spot there. I was like, I don't know what he asked. I was just going to start talking. God. So that is a really good question, and another piece of advice that I have too, which just gets tossed out there so much, so I didn't really throw it into mine, is just like definitely have someone who you're working on your business with, and that's not true for everyone, but I'd say more often than not, like it helps you, unless you know if you're the kind of person who can work on something alone and just like crush it, and some people are just like that, but like I always have to have someone, like any project that I've done, I always have some kind of co-conspirator on. And so having that collaborator to me is like incredibly important, and most entrepreneurs will tell you too, like definitely start with like at least one co-founder. That's really, really standard advice. And I think it also just like having that internal kind of collaboration encourages you to find out how to work with people too, like when you're doing outside collaboration. But I think it comes down to that, just deciding what you care about, and what parts are really frustrating to you. And like if someone can take the parts that are frustrating to you, and that's what they're all about, like they're all about marketing and selling and like finding the right fabrics, and like they're just like, I just need you to produce a print and that sounds good to you, then like, yeah, go with it. But in contracts, you can also write in things, like if you're afraid to like, just figure out what your concerns are and then state them in a way that they like, you can get around them. Like if your concern is that they might use some kind of fabric that you don't like, or sell in some kind of store that you don't like, or whatever else it is, just write that in. Like they make sure they only like these designs are only for 100% organic, whatever it is, you know what I mean? Or like can only be printed on this. You can like completely make stipulations with any contract that you do that hopefully make you really comfortable with them. And I find a really good way to phrase that or put that when you're in the conversations too is that this is about, we're trying to build a relationship here. Like this is not about just this one deal that's going through. This is about everything else that follows, and about making sure that we're both happy with it. And that's like a really just kind of good intro into that conversation. Then you can get kind of into the nitty gritty. I don't know if that's useful at all.
That's good.
Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions that come to mind? Okay, cool. In that case, we'll take a little break, and then we'll come back and actually do some workshopping. And what time is it now? 6:58. Okay. Yeah, we'll probably be back at like 7:10. Take a little 10-minute breather. Awesome, guys.